In Egypt, a 5-story building collapses, killing 4.
Authorities are now investigating the cause of the building's crumble. More details on this later in the news. Good evening, I am Gianna Llanes.
I am Nina Richie Alagao-Flores. This is Matana Agila International. Now for the headlines. The Philippines and India join the 18th East Asia Summit. President Marcos Jr. meets Cambodian and Vietnamese leaders on the sidelines of the ASEAN Summit. Mexico's Morena Party names Claudia Sheinbaum as its 2024 presidential candidate. Chinese authorities arrest 2 workers over damage dealt to the Great Wall of China. And Japan launches its Moon Sniper mission weeks after India's lunar triumph. The Philippine Health Insurance Corporation, or PhilHealth, has vowed to settle the majority of unpaid hospital dues worth 27 billion pesos in the next 90 days. This comes during the House Appropriations Panel hearing on the Department of Health, or DOH's 2024 proposed budget. According to PhilHealth President Emmanuel Ledesma, the agency is processing the reconciling of records with private hospitals. The agency also promised to pay last year's private hospital claims amounting to 25.45 billion pesos.
The Philippine Institute of Volcanology and Seismology, or PHIVOLCS, has issued a warning to the public regarding the entry into the permanent danger zone around Canlaon volcano in Negros Island. This warning comes in response to increased seismic activity in the area. PHIVOLCS has reported 36 volcanic earthquakes recorded from the early hours of the 4th of September to the 6th. They explained that the heightened seismic activity indicates the fracturing of rocks beneath the volcano, which could potentially lead to a phreatic eruption. As of now, alert level 1 is maintained for Canlaon volcano, but this may be raised to level 2 if the upward trend in monitoring parameters persists.
The Philippines has once again been recognized as Asia's leading dive destination for the 5th consecutive year at the World Travel Awards Gala held in Vietnam on the 6th of September. Tourism Secretary Cristina Garcia Frasco expressed that this honor reflects the country's dedication to sustainable tourism development. She emphasized that it reaffirms the Philippines' unparalleled natural beauty and rich biodiversity, making it a beloved destination for divers and tourists from around the world.
French arms manufacturer Naval Group has announced that it has installed new modules to the Philippine Navy's frigates. BRP Jose Rizal and BRP Antonio Luna are now equipped with a Seaguard decoy launching system, marking an important milestone of having an anti-torpedo defense system. This is under a contract between the country's Navy and the French firm. By 2024, Naval Group will deliver the Canto anti-torpedo countermeasure as well as provide training to its personnel. Canto is the latest countermeasure generation in the defense industry.
Former President Rodrigo Duterte is maintaining close ties with Chinese leader Xi Jinping. Duterte, however, does not agree with Beijing's new 10-dash line. According to the former executive chief, although he values his friendship with China, he disagrees with the new demarcation, noting that Philippine territory is non-negotiable while friendship and alliance are different matters. Beijing's new 10-dash line map includes the eastern section of Taiwan, parts of India and Malaysia, as well as portions of the country's exclusive economic zone in the West Philippine Sea.
The Philippines has joined the 18th East Asia Summit, participating alongside the 10 ASEAN member states and additional countries such as Australia, China, India, Japan, and others. Vin Pasqua tells us more.
Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi attends both the 20th ASEAN-India Summit and the East Asia Summit, expressing his support for the initiatives of ASEAN leaders aimed at improving the planet. He emphasizes that ASEAN is an important pillar of India's Act East policy. The East Asia Summit serves as a platform to promote peace and collaborative prosperity with countries beyond Southeast Asia. The summit has identified key priority areas for development, including the environment and energy, education, finance, and others, with the aim of fostering bilateral agreements with partner countries. Vin Pascua reporting for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
An inverted Philippine flag was shown in a meeting between President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. and Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. This came on the sidelines of the ASEAN Summit Wednesday, September 6. During the meeting, the two country leaders had a dialogue about bilateral ties between the two nations and the Filipino diaspora in Canada. Behind Trudeau shows a Philippine flag flaunting red over blue, which according to the flag and heraldic code of the Philippines, the country is in a time of war. The palace said that the faux pas was an honest mistake that had nothing to do with the protocol officers. Meanwhile, the Canadian Prime Minister invited the President to visit Canada by 2024. This is in line with the 75th anniversary of diplomatic ties between Manila and Ottawa.
President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. engages in bilateral discussions with the Prime Ministers of Cambodia and Vietnam to enhance cooperation in various areas, including agriculture and technology. Christina Gira has the details.
The president congratulates Cambodian Prime Minister Hun Manet on his assumption of office, emphasizing Cambodia's vital role within ASEAN as a guiding force in regional policy decisions. The leaders explore potential collaborations in trade, information technology, and efforts to mitigate the impending El Niño phenomenon in the Philippines. President Marcos also meets with Vietnamese Prime Minister Pham Minh Chinh on the sidelines of the ASEAN Summit, highlighting the possibility of further cooperation in rice production and food security. Notably, the Philippines imported a significant amount of rice from Vietnam last year. Christina Gira for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
Coming up, China and Australia hold their first high-level dialogue in 3 years. The U.S. pledges a risky support package for Ukraine. And Mexico is one step closer to naming its first female president. Stay tuned, Mata ng Agila International will return for more global news.
masasabi mong tunay na kaibigan.
Yep! At kapag siya'y natagpuan na, huwag mo nang pakawalan.
Ang tunay na kaibigan, laging nandyan kahit kailan.
Handang gawin ang lahat. Maging happy ka lang.
Gagawin ang Afro-Funk! Para sa'yo, para sa pamilya, at para sa bayan.
Tulad na lang ng inyong mga bagong kaibigan.
Tuwing umaga,
Love!
Tunipet
And
and Afro-Funk!
everything!
Lunes hanggang Biyernes,
6:30 ng umaga
sa Net 25! Let's get there! Love Tunipet and Afro-Funk! Love Tunipet and
Welcome back to Mata ng Agila International. Southeast Asian leaders meet in Indonesia to seek a united voice on the years-long Myanmar crisis, also to tackle rifts over China's growing assertiveness in the South China Sea. Marjorie Quintos has more details.
Myanmar has been ravaged by deadly violence since a 2021 military coup deposed Aung San Suu Kyi's government. It has unleashed a bloody crackdown on dissent. The Association of Southeast Asian Nations, or ASEAN, has been left divided over how to deal with Myanmar's junta rulers and its own failed diplomatic attempts to resolve the crisis. ASEAN has been long decried by critics as a toothless talking shop. Indonesian President Joko Widodo says in his opening talk that ASEAN has agreed not to become a proxy for any power. He says it has also agreed to cooperate with anyone for peace and prosperity. Leaders will try to hash out a united position on the conflict. This, as Myanmar's junta ignores international criticism and refuses to engage with its opponents. Indonesia, this year's chair, has pushed for the junta to enforce a 5-point plan. The plan has been agreed 2 years ago to end the violence and restart negotiations. The junta is barred from the bloc's high-level meetings. In 2026, the Philippines will take over the chairmanship of ASEAN from Myanmar. Marjorie Quintos from Matanang Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
Chinese Premier Li Qiang calls on Japan, South Korea, and ASEAN nations to support Hong Kong's bid to join the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, or RCEP. Li underscores the need to further enhance the strengths of geographical proximity as well as economic complementarity to optimize and boost both industrial and supply chains in the region. He adds that Beijing is willing to deepen its cooperation with all parties in areas such as the digital economy, clean energy, and others. RCEP currently comprises 10 ASEAN nations plus China, Japan, South Korea, Australia, and New Zealand. Hong Kong formally requested to join the deal in January 2022.
China and Australia hold their first high-level talks in 3 years as the two nations resume talks. Dubbed as Australia-China High-Level Dialogue, the meeting had been held annually since 2014 but stopped in 2020 after Beijing restricted numerous Australian imports. China placed the sanctions after Australia questioned the origins of COVID-19. China accounts for nearly 1/3 of Australian trade. Meanwhile, Australia is China's 8th largest cross-country trade partner. Australian former Trade Minister Craig Emerson welcomes the positive developments in the bilateral relationship between Canberra and Beijing.
Is India about to make a name change? Some observers say signs at the G20 summit the country is hosting hint the Southeast Asian country may adopt a different moniker. Anna Kui reports.
These welcome billboards display the country's name as India when written in English. But in Hindi, the name is Bharat. Rumors have been circulating that Prime Minister Narendra Modi wants to change the country's name to Bharat. Modi is facing an election next year. And dropping the country's colonial name that Britain gave it and going back to the traditional name of Bharat would appeal to his supporters in the Hindu nationalist base. Since he first took office, Modi's party has been pushing to break from the past and revert to pre-colonial names. It says the British names invoke a legacy of slavery. Within India, the country is referred to as both India and Bharat as well as Hindustan. But globally, India is the most common name. There has been no comment from the government about a possible name change. Anna Kui from Matanang Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
Ukraine has deployed cluster bombs on Russian civilians, resulting in the tragic death of 2 people and causing injuries to 10 others.
elderly woman has been killed in the latest attack on a civilian area here in Donetsk City. The missile, an American HARM missile, struck at around 6:15 this morning, causing this widespread damage to this apartment. This is the 9th floor of an apartment block in the Karovsky district of the city. This is one of the areas that bears the brunt of the Ukrainian attacks. It is constantly shelled, and this morning an elderly woman was here in her home when the missile attack took place. She was rushed to hospital, but doctors fought to save her life but were unfortunately unable to do so. This is part of what locals here call Donetsk roulette, the daily shelling by all sorts of artillery fire, whether it's from the Grads or the NATO supplied weapons. They simply don't know where they're going to land and whether they're going to wake up alive the next morning. We've been out on the streets. We spoke to locals who are gathered outside and seemed very concerned over the attacks on their community.
That's where my apartment is. A HIMARS shell struck the 9th floor and unfortunately it killed a woman. The room was torn apart. Another woman was wounded.
We heard the whistling of the incoming shell. It woke us up. No one had expected the shelling. We were simply lucky that it didn't hit our apartment.
I think everyone here is lucky today. If the shell had exploded, it's unclear what the consequences would have been, but they wouldn't have been good.
A shell flew into here, but it didn't explode. However, over here a woman was buried in rubble. Emergency workers had to dig her out. There was a lot of blood. When I saw it, I froze. My wife was in shock.
Here we can see just how powerful the impact was. You can see the damage caused to a number of apartments in this building behind me. Many of the windows have been blown out. Glass is strewn across the floor. Clean-up operations are underway. The community has been out making sure the area is safe. Just here, just yards away, you can see a child's playground. So the consequences of the missile attack could have been so much worse. Now, according to local officials, there were 75 separate attacks across Donetsk on Monday using 239 rounds of ammunition. This has also included cluster munitions. We can hear the air defences and shelling continuing right now. So that total is likely to shoot up as the civilian areas of Donetsk continue to come under relentless attack. This is Steve Sweeney in Donetsk City for RT.
A Russian airstrike on a market in eastern Ukraine has left at least 17 people dead. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky describes the attack as deliberate and heinous. The attack on this outdoor market came just hours after U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken arrived in Kyiv with a promise of more funding for Ukraine. As well as the dead, nearly 36 others suffered injuries. It's one of the deadliest attacks on civilians since the war began a year and a half ago. Zelensky says there was no reason for the airstrike because there are no military units nearby. He calls it deliberate.
U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken announced a new aid package for Ukraine worth more than $1 billion during a surprise visit to the war-torn country. The upcoming package, which includes $175 million for weapons, brings U.S. security assistance to more than $43.2 billion since the start of the Russia-Ukraine conflict. The Pentagon said the latest security assistance package will include depleted uranium tank ammunition for use with the stalwart Abrams tanks.
We will continue to stand by Ukraine's side, and today we're announcing new assistance totaling more than $1 billion in this common effort.
The Biden administration has also authorized $2.9 billion in humanitarian assistance and $20.5 billion in World Bank efforts for Ukraine. Despite this, Ukraine was quick to point out that any aid that came their way would be repaid duly and promptly.
Військова допомога, яка надається Україні, а також фінансова допомога та інші види допомоги, вона не є благодійністю. Я хочу ще раз це підкреслити.
Blinken's two-day trip marks the fourth visit of the official to the country since the war began last year, including meetings with key Ukrainian officials, including President Volodymyr Zelensky, Prime Minister Denis Shmyhal, and his diplomatic counterpart, Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba.
The United States has made the decision to provide Ukraine with depleted uranium tank shells. This decision follows overnight drone attacks by Ukraine on cities near Moscow. Russia has strongly criticized this move, describing it as inhumane, as uranium munitions can have radioactive properties that could potentially harm entire generations. The 120-millimeter uranium tank rounds are intended for M1 Abrams tanks that are scheduled to be delivered to Ukraine later this year. While these uranium shells are depleted, there could still be a risk of radiation, according to the International Atomic Energy Agency. The U.S. has also faced widespread criticism for recent deliveries of cluster bombs to Ukraine, which are known to pose a significant danger to civilian populations.
The United States has issued a threat to North Korea, alleging their involvement in arms negotiations, warning that they would face consequences for supplying weapons to Russia intended for use in Ukraine. North Korea has officially denied these claims, while Moscow has refrained from making any official comments regarding North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's planned visit to Russia. U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan believes that the arms negotiations will progress with Kim's meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin.
The U.S. military has conducted the launch of an unarmed Minuteman III intercontinental ballistic missile as a demonstration of the readiness and effectiveness of its nuclear weapon system. This test occurred amid heightened tensions with North Korea, which had recently carried out a simulation of a tactical nuclear strike with a mock warhead. The U.S. characterizes this launch as a routine test aimed at verifying the safety, security, and effectiveness of its weapon system. Russia was also reportedly notified in advance of the launch.
Federal prosecutors plan to seek an indictment of U.S. President Joe Biden's son by the end of this month. It is not clear what charges Justice Department Special Counsel David Weiss plans to file against Hunter Biden, but a planned plea bargain to resolve tax and gun counts faced by the 53-year-old fell apart in July. The case marks the first time the Justice Department had charged the child of a sitting president with the United States' first son's legal woes, becoming a political pressure point as his father pursues a re-election campaign. Mr. Weiss's office gave a deadline of 29 September for the planned new indictment in a status report required by Judge Mary Ellen Norica. The court filings related to the felony gun charge, alleging that Hunter Biden illegally possessed a firearm while he was a drug user. He is also currently under investigation for his business dealings with foreign entities. Hunter Biden's legal team responded in a court filing that their client was abiding by the terms of a so-called diversion agreement approved by a probation office, under which he must stay out of trouble for 2 years.
Mexico's ruling party has nominated former Mexico City Mayor Claudia Sheinbaum as its candidate for the 2024 presidential elections. If elected, she could become Mexico's first female president.
Vamos a ganar el 2024. Vamos a ganar las diputaciones. Vamos a ganar las senadurías. Vamos a ganar las gubernaturas. Y va a haber presidenta de la República y será de la Cuarta Transformación.
Sheinbaum was selected through a series of surveys conducted among members of the ruling Morena party. With Morena currently in control of 22 out of Mexico's 32 states, she holds a significant advantage in the upcoming elections. In response, an opposing coalition has also chosen a female lawmaker named Xochitl Galvez as its candidate, setting the stage for a potentially historic presidential race.
Iran has put an end to the delay of its biggest natural gas field in the world. This after the country's government inaugurated the final stage of development in the South Pars offshore gas field. Visiting the site in the Persian Gulf, RT correspondent Yusuf Jalali reports.
South Pars is the world's largest offshore gas field, and now, after years of delay, Iran has finally inaugurated the last portion of the project, known as Phase 11. The industrial site has 24 wells, which will extract natural gas from the enormous field, which accounts for almost 8% of the world's total gas reserves.
The South Pars gas field, or the North Dome as it's known in Qatar, is a natural gas condensate field located in the Persian Gulf. The ownership of the field is shared by Iran and Qatar, with a third belonging to Tehran and the rest possessed by Doha. Located offshore near the Iranian port city of Asaluye in the Bushehr province, Iran's extension of the reserve is divided into 24 phases, producing an average of over 600 million cubic meters of gas per day. Once the long-awaited Phase 11 is fully operational and all its wells are tapped, it will add another 56 million cubic meters of gas per day to total production.
The primary target of this phase is to produce 11 million cubic meters per day using 4 wells. By drilling 2 other wells in the winter this year, the production will increase to 15 million cubic meters per day. But the ultimate planned target is to extract 56 million cubic meters per day from the 2 platforms of A and B of this field. We expect an added value of about $5 billion a year out of Phase 11.
Phase 11, which is the last piece of South Pars gas field, has had its development delayed for 20 years as a result of Western sanctions, as well as flip-flopping of foreign contractors. Tehran had initially awarded the project to French conglomerate TotalEnergies, when the company pulled out of the project in 2018 after Washington reinstated sanctions on Tehran. This led Iran to take matters into its own hands to finish the mega project. Now, experts here say they're proud that they've been able to complete the project domestically.
As a result of the sanctions that were imposed on our country, Total backed down on its commitments despite the fact that we had a contract with that company. This issue led us to think of relying on our indigenous capacities and expertise. The development of Phase 11 was accomplished by relying on local capabilities, companies, and experts. The project is 100% Iranian.
The sanctions are deemed a blessing to Iran, as not only have they prompted the country to indigenize much of the needed technology to complete the project, they have also saved the country $800 million in developing the gas field.
We can now say that we are now fully capable of building platforms indigenously. There are 4 local companies that have a special site for developing gas platforms. We saved about $800 million in launching the 11B platform. Furthermore, we have saved up to 3 years of time in the development process.
Currently, Iran produces about 1 billion cubic meters of natural gas per day, some 70% of which is supplied by the South Pars field. The country is planning to boost its output to 1.5 billion cubic meters per day by 2029. And this massive gas reserve will play a big part in making that happen. Yusuf Jalali Arte from the South Pars gas field in the Persian Gulf.
Madagascar's President Andry Rajoelina says that he will run for re-election in November. Rajoelina took power in the country in 2009 at the time of a coup that ousted former President Marc Ravalomanana. In 2013, Rajoelina did not contest in the said year's election due to international pressure. However, he was voted back into power in 2018. Wearing a white suit, he addresses Madagascar that he is ready to be the president of all Malagasy people.
After losing power in a coup on August 30, Ali Bongo was kept under house arrest. A week after, the former Gabonese president can now move about freely. The transitional President General Bryce Oligui Nguema, also acting as the chairman of the Committee for the Transition and Restoration of Institutions, said that Bongo was a free man. In a statement broadcast on Gabonese state television channel Gabon 24, Colonel Ulrich Manfombi, the spokesman for the ruling junta, said that given the current state of health of former President Ali Bongo Ondimba, he is now free to move about, even travel abroad to undergo medical checkups if he so wishes.
Le Comité pour la transition et la restauration des institutions, CTRI, réaffirme que compte tenu de son état de santé, l'ancien président de la République, Ali Bongo Ondimba, est libre de ses mouvements.
The former head of state had suffered a stroke in 2018 while on an official visit to Saudi Arabia. The illness kept him out of office for almost 10 months. During this time, he was treated in Morocco.
Il peut, s'il le souhaite, se rendre à l'étranger afin d'y effectuer ses contrôles médicaux.
Since his illness, the former president has suffered some after effects in how he speaks and walks, but he himself says he was feeling better. General Bryce Oligui Nguema cited Bongo's illness as one of the reasons why the army took power, stating that Ali Bongo had been retired for quite some time now. Up next, torrential rains have plagued multiple parts of Europe. 150 migrants have been rescued off the Caribbean. And 2 workers have caused irreparable damage to China's Great Wall. Mata ng Agila International will be back after a short break.
Dito, ang inyong sumbong siguradong may responding katapat, hindi nagdadalawang isip na tumulong sino man ang nangangailangan. Expose, umaalingasaw na creek sa Parañaque City na matagal ng perwisyo sa mga residente pinaaksyonan.
Ang nangyayari, parang napabayaan na talaga yung creek namin.
Exclusive, aspiring Pinoy inventor na gustong ipakilala ang kanyang imbensyon na makatutulong sa ating kalikasan. Nagparesponde. Isang pampublikong paralan, may balik eskwelang hiling sa Responde.
Monday, first screening.
At Net25 Films na Monday first screening, nagatid ng saya at inspirasyon sa ilang individual na kapos sa buhay.
Salamat! Salamat!
Sabado, alas 6 hanggang alas 7 ng gabi, ito ang Responde, Mata ng Mamamayan.
Four people are dead after an apartment building in Cairo came tumbling down Wednesday. Authorities say the collapse of the 4-story building is in the same neighborhood where a similar tragedy occurred earlier this summer. Macy Membreri tells us more.
Rescuers continue to sift through the rubble looking for survivors. It's not clear why the building gave way. The public prosecutor has launched an investigation. The Egyptian government says it will give about $2,000, that's 114,000 pesos, to families of the dead. The collapse occurred about 3 kilometers from where another building fell down in July, killing 6 people. Building collapses are common in Egypt, especially in poor neighborhoods, because of lax construction standards. Thousands of buildings in the country are believed to be at risk of falling down. Macy Membreri for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
At least one person is dead in eastern Greece after torrential rains hit the country. This after being already ravaged for weeks by devastating wildfires. Glenn Cadusale has more details.
Greek government officials say victims of the rains appear to have been carried away by flood waters. A shepherd was reported missing. The Greek Coast Guard reports a woman who had been canoeing at sea in the Halkidiki region further north is also being sought. According to the National Meteorological Service, the regional capital Volos has seen 200 millimeters. That's about 8 inches of rain, while 600 millimeters have fallen in the neighboring village of Zagora. A meteorologist says the amount of water that fell in 24 hours is the same as the usual rainfall for the whole of autumn. Travelers are banned to several areas where planes cannot approach the airport because of the flooding. Prime Minister Kyriakos Mitsotakis says this is an extreme phenomenon. Glenn Cadusale for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
Torrential rains have also hit and ravaged the countries of Turkey and Bulgaria. 5 people died in flash floods from heavy rains that turned the streets of Istanbul and parts of northwestern Turkey into rushing rivers. The nightmare storm partially flooded an Istanbul subway station and forced the evacuation of dozens of people from a city library. The rains followed a particularly dry summer that saw the water reservoirs of the city of 16 million people fall to 9-year lows. Meanwhile, the toll from torrential rains and flooding on Bulgaria's Black Sea coast has climbed to 4, while several thousand tourists have been left stranded. Heavy rain and thunderstorms since late Monday caused rivers to overflow, damaging bridges and cutting off access in the region south of the coastal city of Burgas. The rains were the heaviest since 1994, where around 4,000 people are affected by the disaster.
Panamanian authorities have rescued victims of human trafficking, and they have arrested some of those behind the operation. Panama's National Border Service conducted the rescue in the Caribbean Sea. A Border Service official says 5 small boats carried 150 migrants. He says they are of different nationalities. Once on shore, authorities arrested 5 suspected smugglers. Border officials say the suspects are Colombian nationals. A manhunt continues in the United States for a convicted killer who broke out of a Pennsylvania prison. 34-year-old Danilo Cavalcante managed to escape last week by scaling a wall and climbing over razor wire. Myla Simbulan reports.
Danilo Cavalcante has managed to elude the dragnet, and police in Philadelphia are urging people to be cautious. They tell them to be alert and call them with anything suspicious. They also ask residents to secure their homes, any outbuildings, and vehicles. Out of caution, 2 school districts have shuttered schools. Pennsylvania State Police spokesman George Bivan says Cavalcante has already managed to get some clothing and other supplies. Cavalcante is originally from Brazil. He is serving a life sentence for killing his ex-girlfriend in front of her children. In Swarthmore, Pennsylvania, Myla Simbulan for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak found himself in the hot seat in Parliament Wednesday over the structural integrity of the country's schools. The opposition accuses him of doing nothing to solve the problem. Jay Suarez tells us more.
Crumbling concrete has forced the British government to shut down more than 100 schools across the country. The buildings are at risk of collapsing. Builders had used a lightweight, air-filled concrete, something common between the 1950s and 1990s. There are reports as many as 400 schools may be at risk. Teachers and students are scrambling to find alternative classroom space. In Parliament, Sunak defended his government's closure of the schools.
Mr. Speaker, I know how concerned parents, children and teachers are, and I want to start by assuring them that the government is doing everything it can to fix this quickly and minimise the disruption to children's education. We make no apology for acting decisively in the...
Jay Suarez for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
2 people have been detained after using an excavator to dig a hole in the Great Wall of China. Images show the aftermath of the scene where a dusty road had been cut through along a raised section of ground that appeared to be the remnants of the ancient barrier. The suspects admitted under questioning that they had used a digger to create a shortcut where they had caused irreversible damage to the Ming-era wall, which was described as a relatively intact section of significant research value. Currently, the two suspects have been criminally detained as the case is continuing to be investigated. On the final day of a major climate summit in Nairobi, African leaders have adopted a declaration to address climate challenges in the continent. Announced on Wednesday by the summit's convener, Kenyan President William Ruto proposes new global taxes and reforms to international financial institutions to help fund climate change action that will form the basis of their negotiating position at November's COP28 summit. The Nairobi Declaration capped the three-day Africa Climate Summit, which was dominated by discussions of how to mobilize financing to the increasingly extreme weather, conserve natural resources, and develop renewable energy. Advocates have long called for rich carbon polluters to honor long-standing climate pledges for poorer and more vulnerable nations.
At the summit, our shared understanding became clear that Africa is not only the cradle of humanity, it is indeed the future, and that we are the last frontier of untapped potential in the form of hundreds of millions of young men and women who are educated, skilled, motivated. We are therefore determined to have difficult conversations, take hard decisions, and make uncomfortable changes to set international consensus on an Afrocentric and globally inclusive path into an African future.
Analysts and activists, meanwhile, are split about the effectiveness of the summit, saying the participants on the event's final day that carbon markets are bogus solutions. The summit is part of Africa's preparation for the next United Nations Climate Change Conference, which is scheduled to take place in Dubai in December.
In the U.S., the nation's capital, Washington, D.C., is baking in a dangerous heat wave. The mayor has recently activated a hot weather emergency for 5 days. Rosel Feria reports.
Heat records were broken in recent days here in the nation's capital, some that have stood since 1881, and the sweltering weather is expected to continue. The National Weather Service warns that the heat index in the eastern United States will stay close to 100 degrees Fahrenheit, that is 37 degrees Celsius. DC Mayor Muriel Bowser activated a hot weather emergency from Sunday to Thursday. Every time the temperature or heat index forecast to reach 95 degrees Fahrenheit or higher for at least 4 consecutive days, a hot weather emergency is put in place. During this kind of emergency, Washington sets up cooling centers for residents seeking relief from the heat. The district reminds residents to recognize signs and symptoms of heat exhaustion and heat stroke. These include dry red skin, convulsions, throbbing headaches, disorientation, chills, delirium, and coma. It warns that onset of heat stroke can be rapid. A person can go from feeling apparently well to a seriously ill condition within minutes. Amid this extreme heat, residents are urged to stay cool, keep hydrated, and check on seniors, unsheltered residents, and vulnerable neighbors. Authorities also say walk your pets early in the morning, give them plenty of water, and do not leave them in vehicles, which can reach dangerous temperatures within 10 minutes. At the National Mall here in Washington, D.C., Rosel Feria for Mata ng Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
Coming right up, the Munich Car Show opens its doors to more electronic vehicle brands. Gilas Pilipinas names its new head coach. And Taylor Swift's Eras Tour movie causes box office chaos. Catch more news in business, tech, sports, and entertainment when we return.
Alam namin ang iyong pagsisikap.
Talagang binaril na yung claim nila sa 9-line.
Yung kanang kamay, pinakamayan ang Pilipinas, pero yung kalimang kamay, sinasaksak naman tayo.
Hindi tayo naghahanap ng basagulo, pero nagpo-protesta kami. Ngayon, tayo yung iniipit, tapos sinasabi nila, nangako tayo.
Baka magulat na lang tayo, baka may ilabas po ang China na meron silang resibo pala.
Sama-sama nating harapin ang mga issue at problema ng bayan. Dito lang sa ASPN, Lunes hanggang Biyernes, 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. sa Net 25.
Mga ka-netizens, abangan ninyo po dahil makakasama niyo ako sa Lutong Daza ngayong Sabado na 11 a.m. Gagawa tayo ng masasarap na mga pika-pika favorites at syempre with Chef Sandy and Miss Pat. Let's do this. Pika, 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 pika. Oh, 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 oh.
China reported another monthly decline in imports and exports, despite having the decline less steep than expected. Imports have now fallen every month in 2023, while exports have fallen year on year for every month since April as global demand for Chinese goods wanes. Exports in U.S. dollar terms fell by 8.8% in August from a year ago, better than the 9.2% drop forecast by economic analysts. Imports in U.S. dollar terms fell by 7.3% in August from a year ago, better than the 9% forecast done previously. The U.S. is China's largest trading partner on a single-country basis. The Association of Southeast Asian Nations is China's largest trading partner on a regional basis. China's exports to Southeast Asia fell by 13.3%, while imports dropped by 6.1% in August from a year ago. China is the world's largest importer of crude oil, with auto exports remaining a bright spot, but the pace of growth slowed given the rise in the demand for more resource-efficient electric vehicles. China's economic rebound from the pandemic has slowed in the last few months, dragged down by a property market slump and lackluster consumer spending. Tesla and Chinese car makers showed off their newest electric models at the Munich Auto Fair, throwing down the gauntlet to their European rivals. Some 700,000 visitors are expected to attend this week's IAA, with Chancellor Olaf Scholz touring the fair. The industry-wide shift towards electric vehicles was on full display in Germany's biennial IAA Mobility Show. Homegrown giant Mercedes-Benz unveiled its CLA concept, while BMW showcased its new class generation of battery-powered vehicles. U.S. electric car pioneer Tesla returned to IAA for a glimpse of its revamped mass-market Model 3. Industry experts said Tesla's appearance in Munich was a sign it was taking the increased competition in the EV market seriously, especially from China. Chinese manufacturers were out in force at the fair, hoping to win over European drivers with cheaper electric cars. In all, 41% of exhibitors at the fair have their headquarters in China, including brands such as BYD, Leapmotor, and Geely. Chinese groups benefit from lower production costs, allowing them to offer cutthroat prices at a time when entry-level EVs are still a rarity. Japan launches its Moon Sniper mission Thursday, weeks after India's successful lunar landing. This is to bounce back from its string of mishaps, having its launch already been postponed for 3 times due to inclement weather. The Japanese Aerospace Exploration Agency, or JAXA, notes that the homegrown H-2A rocket is tasked to deliver its SLIM or SMART lander for investigating moon on the lunar surface. Japan aims to land its SLIM lander within 100 meters of its selected area on the moon. According to the space agency, the mission cost $100 million and is expected to reach the moon by February of 2024. Record shows that only 4 nations have successfully landed on the moon. They are the United States, Russia, China, and India. Thousands of gaming enthusiasts headed to Washington State during Labor Day weekend. The world's largest gaming convention, PAX or PAL West, in its 19th year, returned to the Seattle Convention Center with the industry's newest technology. Francis Francisco has the story.
PAX West, one of the gaming industry's most anticipated events, took Seattle by storm this year. Gamers from all around the world flocked to celebrate their shared passions of all things gaming. The atmosphere at PAX West was electrifying, with cosplayers transforming into their favorite characters and fans eagerly exploring the latest games and technologies. Gaming giants showcased their upcoming releases, and attendees had the chance to get hands-on with titles like Tekken 8 and Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown. The buzz around these games are palpable. VR content was also a mainstay, with various companies showing their iteration of virtual reality technology. Video game streamers were also in attendance.
So this is my first time here in PAX. My favorite thing about PAX so far is indie games. Those are really cool, just to see like all the new concepts that are coming out and to be able to kind of like, I guess, test drive it. So it's really fun.
Now let's turn our attention to another gaming powerhouse, Nintendo. For the first time ever, the gaming giant held its Nintendo Live event outside of Japan.
Say the new Nintendo Live part is really fun. There's a bunch of Nintendo themed stuff, very kid-friendly, and there's even a concert. Nintendo part is very good for families, and if you just want to meet people who like video games or tabletop game and just meet new communities maybe, or people that you've met online, it's very fun.
It's clear that the gaming world is alive and thriving, with plenty of exciting experiences on the horizon.
It's a really great convention. I highly recommend it for families, to bring out people who, you know, haven't really been to a convention like this before, and they're into like video games and stuff like that. So I think it's a great family environment to bring people just to check it out.
In Seattle, Washington, Francis Francisco for Mata ng Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
With Chot Reyes' blessing, Tim Cohn takes over the national head coaching duties for a retooled Gilas Pilipinas squad in the Asian Games. Tim Cohn, the Philippine Basketball Association's head coach with the most number of wins, will be calling the shots for Gilas for the 19th Asian Games, set to tip off on September 23 in China. He will be assisted by Richard Del Rosario, Jong Uychico, Josh Reyes, and L.A. Tenorio. Samahang Basketball ng Pilipinas and the PBA made the announcement, noting, however, that they are still trying to put together the final lineup. Cohn will reprise a role he last had in the 2019 Southeast Asian Games hosted by the Philippines, where Gilas cruised to the gold medal. The American coach first steered the nationals, dubbed the Philippine Centennial team, to a bronze medal finish at the 1998 ASEAN held in Bangkok. As the semifinals begin tomorrow, Team Canada completes the Final Four in the 2023 FIBA World Cup. This after Canada defeated Slovenia for a final spot in the semis, 100-89. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander led Team Canada with 31 points, 10 rebounds, and 4 assists. His teammate Dylan Brooks scored 14 points before being ejected in the fourth quarter for taunting. Luka Doncic, meanwhile, led Slovenia with 26 points, 5 assists, and 4 rebounds. He was ejected, however, as well from the game for his second technical foul in the fourth quarter, as Slovenia was unable to close the gap. The Canadians will next face Serbia in the first game of the semifinals tomorrow, as Germany will face Team USA in the second game. Meanwhile, in the U.S. Open, the cast is complete for its semifinal round. In the women's singles, Madison Keys has returned to familiar territory at the U.S. Open as she reached her third semifinals of the tournament after defeating Marketa Vondrousova. This after Keys downs the reigning Wimbledon champion Vondrousova in 2 sets, 6-1 and 6-2. Their clash was briefly delayed during the first game for a spectator who required medical attention. When play resumed, Keys was on a roll in wrapping the game with a scorching forehand winner after Vondrousova tried to catch up. Next up for the number 17 Keys is a semifinal showdown with number 2 seed Aryna Sabalenka. Over to the men's singles. Daniil Medvedev has defeated his good friend Andrei Rublev in 3 sets to reach the U.S. Open semifinals. To what has been an all-Russian battle, it was a grueling day for both, as Medvedev saw the doctor on the court at 2 different junctures of the match. But in the end, the victory was a testament to his will as he fought through stress and fatigue to reach his 4th U.S. Open semifinal in the past 5 years. Waiting for him in the semis will be the defending champion Carlos Alcaraz, who defeated Alexander Zverev of Germany. Here it comes. Taylor Swift Eras Tour concert film with AMC infuriates movie studios and has disrupted domestic and international theater schedules. Taylor Swift has announced her worldwide Eras Tour concert film that will be available in all theaters for 4 weekends starting on October 13. American Multi-Cinema or AMC and Cinemark were the only film partners who knew about the details of concert film. Some theaters are now catching up to cash in on the latest trend. Swift and her team chose the AMC Theaters distribution to distribute her record in the United States, while Cinemark and other circuits will distribute the film internationally. This concert film is not only exclusive to any exhibitor in the U.S., as New York-based distribution company Variance will be in charge of booking for other theaters, a task which it may expect the film to reach more than 4,000 screens on October's box office. Meanwhile, Warner Bros. Agreed with exhibitors to move the release date to spring from the original date of November 3 for Dune Part 2, as it will concur the final week for Eras Tour concert film. Some companies made the same decision, as Universal Studios moved Jason Blum's The Exorcist the Believer from October 13 to October 6, while Bleecker Street has already stated plans to change its premiere date, and What Happens Later, directed by Meg Ryan, has already moved their premiere to November 3. Paramount has also planned that Killers would skip the October 6 limited release and move straight to early release on Apple streaming. Leonardo DiCaprio and Robert De Niro's Killers of the Flower Moon might compete with Swift for IMAX and premium screens. However, IMAX venues have not yet released the dates for both of the films on the weekend of October 20. Theaters' ticket websites are now being bombarded for an opportunity to watch the pop superstar on the silver screen, which may affect Sony's The Equalizer 3 opening this Friday, as AMC suggested people buy tickets at theaters due to website traffic. The twin strikes of Hollywood's film and TV productions led to expectations of a quieter premiere for the Toronto International Film Event 2023, with local businesses reporting a downscale of their usual profits from the aforementioned annual event. Catherine Ortula has the scoop.
Lesser expectations of a star-studded event looms over the kickoff of the Toronto International Film Event this year, due to the ongoing SAG-AFTRA and Writers Guild of America strikes. Charles Caboth, an impresario of multiple Canadian businesses, still expects a buzz within this year's event, but notes that it will most likely be a more mellow TIFF than of those done in recent years. Meanwhile, TIFF has yet to release a clear statement on how many A-list celebrities will make an appearance on its red carpets, with many still expecting the arrival of other foreign actors outside Hollywood's strike rules. TIFF launches its most ambitious film coverage event to date, having over 75 films covered, starting with Hayao Miyazaki's animated feature The Boy and the Heron during its opening night, which has already broken records during its premiere in Japan. Another notable film showing at this year's event is Viggo Mortensen's The Dead Don't Hurt, starring Mortensen himself and Vicky Krieps in a Western feminist film set in the year 1860s. Oscar winners Jamie Foxx and Tommy Lee Jones also graces the big screen, starring in the true-to-life comedic film The Burial, which highlights an eccentric unity shared by their desire for justice. The film's dream scenario, featuring Nicolas Cage as an inconspicuous academic who is bombarded by his unexpected fame, and Quiz Lady, a comedy film led by Awkwafina and Sandra Oh, are also amongst the sought-after movies in this year's film event. Catherine Ertula for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
I don't think we have enough days to line up everything that we just saw minutes ago.
Yes, yeah, so much information.
And to send you off tonight, here's a quote from American media personality Ryan Seacrest. We meet no ordinary people in our lives. If you give them a chance, everyone has something amazing to offer.
This is a good testament that sometimes we see some people every day and we forget to ask them how they are, what their story is. Maybe that's something we can do in the future more because we can learn so much from each other.
Oh, definitely. I think every person, no matter how seemingly ordinary, has some unique gifts and talents that will make this world a better place.
So talk to the people around you.
Right.
And that's a wrap for tonight's news. Catch the latest updates on our social media channels. I am Gianna Llanes.
I am Nina Richie Alagao-Flores. This is Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.